Imagine this. You are standing at the edge of a vast, dark ocean. The water stretches endlessly before you, its surface broken only by the occasional crest of a wave, glinting faintly under a moonlit sky. You step forward, not out of desire, but because something unseen pulls you. The water is cold, much colder than you expected, and as it rises to your knees, your hips, your chest, you realize with a slow, creeping dread that you cannot stop. The current drags you deeper, and though you fight, thrashing against its grip, the struggle only exhausts you faster. Now imagine that this ocean is not made of water, but of time. Each wave is a day, a month, a year, each one pulling you further from the shore of your birth, further into the depths of an existence you never chose. You gasp for air, but the air is thin, unsatisfying. You reach for something to hold on to, but there is nothing. And yet all around you, others are swimming, laughing, pretending not to notice the weight of the water crushing their lungs. Why? Why does life feel this way, like a riptide dragging us under, no matter how hard we kick toward the surface? Why is it that the moments of joy seem fleeting, while suffering lingers like a shadow? You have felt it, haven't you? That quiet, unspoken ache beneath the surface of your daily routines. The sense that no matter what you achieve, whom you love or what you acquire, it is never enough. The hunger never stops, the fear never fades, the question never quiets, is this all there is? We are taught from childhood that happiness is the default, that suffering is an aberration, a glitch in the system. Work hard, be kind, follow the rules, and life will reward you. But then why do so many of us, even in moments of triumph, feel the undertow of emptiness? Why does fulfillment seem to dissolve the moment we grasp it, like smoke through our fingers? The ancient Greeks believed suffering was the work of capricious gods. The medievals called it punishment for sin. The modern world tells us it's a chemical imbalance, a faulty mindset, a lack of gratitude. But what if they are all wrong? What if suffering is not an accident, not a mistake, but something far more fundamental? Something woven into the very fabric of existence. Arthur Schopenhauer, the 19th century philosopher whose name still sends shivers down the spines of optimists, dared to voice the unspeakable. Life is suffering. Not because the world is cruel, not because we are flawed, but because desire itself is a bottomless pit. We are, he argued, like shipwrecked sailors drinking seawater. The more we consume, the thirstier we become. Pleasure is merely the temporary cessation of pain, a fleeting illusion that keeps us chasing the next fix. And when we finally catch it, the cycle begins again. But here's the true horror. What if we need the suffering? What if the hunger, the longing, the dissatisfaction are not bugs in the system, but its defining features? What if the ocean is not pulling us under, but we are the ocean, and the drowning is the point? The question is not whether life contains suffering. The question is, why do we refuse to see it? And what happens when we finally open our eyes? You wake up each morning with the same unspoken expectation. Today will be different. Today, the gnawing void inside you will finally be filled. Maybe it's the promotion, the perfect relationship, the dream house, the next vacation. You reach for these things like a man in a desert reaches for a mirage, only to find again and again that the water was never really there. Why does this happen? Why does satisfaction always slip away just as you think you've grasped it? Schopenhauer's answer is as brutal as it is illuminating. You are not designed to be satisfied. At the core of human existence, he argues, lies an insatiable force, the will, a blind, ceaseless striving that propels us forward, not toward happiness, but toward mere survival and reproduction. The will does not care if you are happy. It only demands that you want, that you chase, that you struggle. And so you do. You chase money, love, status, meaning, not because these things will fulfill you, but because the will must move, like a shark that dies if it stops swimming. Modern psychology echoes this in eerie ways. The hedonic treadmill, the well-documented phenomenon where humans return to a baseline level of happiness no matter what they achieve, proves Schopenhauer right. You adapt to pleasure and it loses its power. The new car becomes ordinary. The thrill of success fades. The lover's touch grows familiar. And so you seek the next thing and the next forever. But here's the twist. You are not just a victim of this cycle. You are its willing participant. Friedrich Nietzsche, Schopenhauer's rebellious successor, saw this with terrifying clarity. Society, he warned, teaches you to want what it sells, security, comfort, approval, while disguising the truth, that these are illusions meant to keep you docile. Religion promises heaven. Capitalism promises fulfillment through consumption. Even self-help culture sells you the lie that if you just think positively enough, your suffering will vanish. But it doesn't vanish. It mutates. Carl Jung called this the shadow, the repressed, denied parts of the self that fester beneath the surface. When you refuse to acknowledge that suffering is inevitable, it doesn't disappear. It seeps out in other ways, as anxiety, as self-sabotage, as a quiet but relentless despair. Viktor Frankl, who survived the Holocaust, put it bluntly. What man actually needs is not a tensionless state, but rather the striving and struggling for a worthwhile goal. In other words, suffering is not the enemy, meaninglessness is. And yet we live in a world that offers endless distractions instead of meaning. Social media numbs us with dopamine hits. Consumer culture tells us the next purchase will fix us. Spiritual bypassing encourages us to just let go, rather than face the darkness. But none of it works, because the problem isn't that you're not trying hard enough to be happy. The problem is that happiness was never the point. So what is the point? That's the question that leads to the abyss, and the answer is more terrifying and more liberating than you've been led to believe. You walk through life believing you are free, that your desires are yours, your ambitions chosen, your struggles meaningful. But what if none of that is true? What if every choice you make, every goal you pursue, is just another ripple in the vast, unconscious current of the will? Schopenhauer saw the consequences of this truth everywhere. Look at history. Wars fought for land that is later abandoned. Empires built only to crumble. Revolutions that replace one tyranny with another. Look at your own life. Relationships that promise fulfillment but bring new forms of loneliness, careers that demand everything and give back just enough to keep you trapped. The pattern is undeniable. The more you strive, the more you suffer. But the most insidious consequence is not the suffering itself, it's the way we lie to ourselves about it. Cognitive science reveals how effortlessly the mind constructs narratives to shield itself from discomfort. Cognitive dissonance forces you to justify your pain, to tell yourself this struggle is worth it. The sunk cost fallacy keeps you chained to dead-end paths because admitting failure would hurt too much. Even memory betrays you. Rosy retrospection smooths over past suffering, making you nostalgic for times that in reality were just as fraught with longing as the present. Culture, too, conspires to keep you asleep. Aldous Huxley's Brave New World warned of a society that anesthetizes pain with pleasure, and we now live in that world. Endless entertainment, cheap dopamine, and manufactured outrage keep you distracted from the fundamental emptiness. Jean-Paul Sartre called this bad faith, the act of pretending you are not free, of playing a role to avoid the terrifying responsibility of choosing your own meaning. And so, you numb yourself. You scroll, you consume, you chase. You tell yourself that one day you'll be happy, but that day never comes. Because the system is rigged, not by some shadowy elite, but by the very nature of existence itself. Schopenhauer's bleakest insight was this: life is a pendulum swinging between pain and boredom. When you don't have what you want, you suffer. When you get it, you grow bored, and the cycle begins anew. But here's the turning point. What if recognizing this trap is the first step toward breaking free? The realization crashes over you like a wave. You have been chasing a ghost. Every promise of happiness, every goal you thought would fill the void. All of them were illusions, distractions from the raw truth that life is, by its very nature, suffering. So now what? Do you surrender to despair? Do you numb yourself with more distractions, more hollow ambitions? No. There is another way, one that Schopenhauer himself pointed toward, though few dare to follow it. The first escape, aesthetic contemplation art, music, philosophy. These are not mere diversions, but temporary reprieves from the tyranny of the will. When you lose yourself in a symphony, a painting, or an idea, something extraordinary happens. The self dissolves. For a fleeting moment, you are no longer a hungry, wanting creature. You become pure perception, free from the endless cycle of desire. Schopenhauer called this the sublime, the rare experience where the ego quiets and you touch something beyond suffering. But art alone is not enough. It is a glimpse, not a cure. The second escape, asceticism. Here the path grows steeper. The saints, mystics, and sages of history understood what most never will. The only way to stop suffering is to stop wanting. Buddhism calls this nirvana, the extinguishing of desire. Schopenhauer admired this, but saw it as nearly impossible for most. Yet the principle remains true. The less you cling, the freer you become. This does not mean abandoning all ambition. It means seeing through it. It means pursuing goals not because you believe they will fulfill you, but because the act itself has meaning. Viktor Frankl survived Auschwitz by finding purpose in suffering, not despite it. Nietzsche proclaimed, "He who has a why to live can bear almost any how." The final rebellion, radical acceptance, this is the ultimate defiance. To look directly into the abyss of existence and say, "I see you." To stop pretending that happiness is the default state. To stop blaming yourself for not feeling fulfilled in a world designed to keep you hungry. When you accept that suffering is inevitable, something paradoxical happens. It loses its power over you. You no longer rage against the universe for its cruelty. You no longer crumble when pleasure fades. You begin to find beauty in the struggle itself, not because it leads somewhere, but because it is real, and you are alive to witness it. This is the rebellion, not to escape life, but to see it clearly, and in that seeing to transcend it. You have followed the trail this far, through the ocean of suffering, through the illusions of desire, through the fragile escapes of art and asceticism. Now, at the edge of understanding, the final revelation awaits. It is this: you were never meant to be happy, but you were meant to be free. Schopenhauer's philosophy, for all its darkness, contains a hidden liberation. Once you accept that suffering is not a mistake, but the baseline condition of existence, a profound shift occurs. The chase ends. The treadmill stops. You are no longer a slave to the delusion that fulfillment lies just over the next horizon, and in that stillness, something unexpected happens. You begin to truly live. The illusion of the self, the root of suffering, Schopenhauer argued, is the belief in an enduring, separate I, a self that must be protected, satisfied, and validated. But what if this I is the problem? Neuroscience now confirms what mystics have long claimed. The self is a construct, a story the brain tells to make sense of chaos. When you loosen your grip on this fiction, the weight of personal suffering lightens. You become less a victim of your individual pain and more a witness to the universal human condition. The will as cosmic force. Here is the most radical insight. Your suffering is not personal. The will that drives you is the same force that spins galaxies and seeds forests. It is the blind, creative, destructive energy of existence itself. You are not separate from it. You are it. Your desires, your struggles, your brief joys, they are all expressions of something far vaster than your individual life. This does not erase suffering, but it transforms your relationship to it. When you see your pain as part of the great unfolding of reality, not as punishment or accident, but as the inevitable friction of being, it becomes something you can bear, even honor. The redemption of meaning in the end. Schopenhauer's pessimism contains a secret hope. The less you demand from life, the more it can give you. When you stop insisting that existence conform to your desires, you open yourself to moments of unlooked-for beauty. The slant of light through a window, a stranger's unexpected kindness, the quiet joy of creating without needing it to mean anything. This is the ultimate truth. Life is suffering, but it is also breathtaking, and you are here to see it, not as a conqueror, not as a victim, but as a fleeting spark of awareness in the vast dark, awake, unflinching, and, against all odds, free.